to that episode of The Guts to Critique.
We just got back from seeing Wicked. So we're going to share some thoughts with you. I want to start by saying I'm your stereotypical girl who enjoys musicals. I love music, and I don't have a problem with seeing characters sing throughout the whole movie. Him, on the other hand, is your stereotypical guy who does not enjoy musicals, does not like the singing throughout the movie. So you're going to get two different takes, right?
My perspective on musicals is that there's just really no logic to them. Like, whenever you're telling a story, there has to be some rules, there has to be some logic to kind of anchor it. And I feel like musicals, a lot of them just don't have that, where it's like, we are pressed for time, we're in a rush, there's a lot of tension, so let's sing. That's what it feels like, and it just... I can never wrap my head around it. I can never really buy into it.
That being said, this will still be a fair review because, like, you do enjoy some musicals such as The Lion King. Mm-hmm. So it will still be a fair review. Just kind of two different perspectives of it, I guess. So I guess we'll start with the musical aspect of it. So this film is a storytelling film, and it is a two-parter, which they don't advertise it as. So that was kind of a shocker going in. And as for a musical, I don't think the two-parter will work, especially with the storytelling aspect of it. And it was definitely really long, and it doesn't have to be two parts. It doesn't have to be, 2 hours and 40 minutes? It didn't have to be that long. It was kind of that, plus the music, it was just kind of taking me out of it. I wasn't enjoying it as much.
Yeah, as a musical, I tried to go in with an open mind, knowing that I'm not a fan of musicals, and I didn't really like any of the songs. It's just not my thing. There was one song that I kind of enjoyed because it was kind of played for, like, humor and comedy.
Yeah.
So I kind of enjoyed that one. But other than that, I didn't think any of them were really memorable. I didn't really enjoy or like any of them.
Most of them were kind of unnecessary.
Yeah.
Especially for a musical. It's like musicals usually have necessary songs.
And it was very inconsistent where sometimes they would break out into song and then they would have, like, conversations and dialogue, and then they break out into song a few minutes later. And then there are other times where we're singing, like, 15-second conversation, we're singing a whole different song, 15-second conversation, we're singing this whole other thing. There was really no consistency or logic to any of it. Talking about the runtime, 2 hours and 40 minutes.
Yikes.
If that intimidates you, it should, because
it was so long.
It felt like 2 hours and 40 minutes. And especially when it's 2 hours and 40 minutes of, like, on and off dialogue with on and off singing in musicals, like, songs and stuff, like, it absolutely felt like 2 hours and 40 minutes. It really dragged, and, yeah.
Like, I will say, they both have beautiful voices. It's Ariana Grande and Cynthia Erivo, I think is how you pronounce it. I hope that's how you pronounce it. They both have beautiful voices. Cynthia, she was so talented and she sang beautifully. Ariana, she is very talented, but I think that she tried to throw more talent into there, and rather than, like, what the movie needed, so some of her lyrics were kind of hard to understand, even though she has a beautiful voice. It was just, she was trying to hit those high notes that she didn't have to hit.
Yeah, I am not an Ariana Grande fan, and hearing her sing in this movie, it just felt like the most over-the-top thing of, like, I'm gonna hit the highest high notes of all time, and that's gonna be the singing. And Cynthia, I only know her character name. The main character's name is Elphaba. I don't even know how to pronounce that.
She's the Wicked Witch. We're gonna go with that.
We're gonna call her the Wicked Witch, who isn't so wicked in this movie. No. That's called Wicked. But the witch, I thought she was very likable, very charming, very funny.
Yes.
I thought she did a great job with the singing, even though I didn't really enjoy the songs. I thought she had a really good voice. Ariana Grande's character, like, she's written to be unlikable at first.
Yeah.
But a lot of the characters are, because none of them like
the protagonist.
The protagonist. Now we're calling it the protagonist. None of them like the protagonist. They're all written to be mean to her. So when they're being mean to the main character, you don't like them.
Yeah.
And so a lot of the characters in this movie, you kind of have to suffer through them. And Ariana Grande's character, like, she has an arc. There's, like, some growth and change in there, but, like, at first she's just so unlikable. And, like, they play it, and they play it for humor, a lot of it, because she's, like, very narcissistic and very into herself. And they play some of that for laughs, and sometimes the jokes worked. Other times it was like, you're just obnoxious and insufferable.
So, yeah, on that note, getting into the acting, I think they both fit their roles very, very well. And I think that Glinda's character, I actually enjoyed her character. I wasn't supposed to like her, obviously, because she didn't like the protagonist, and she was definitely annoying, but I think she did it well, and because of that, I enjoyed it, and the humor, it worked on me. I thought it was very funny how they played the, I'm better than you card, the narcissistic card. I think it was really enjoyable, and they both did so well in those roles.
Yeah, I thought they both played the roles very, very well.
Yeah, and the Wicked Witch she was very funny and very charming.
Yeah.
She was definitely a very good protagonist. And another actor in this movie is Jeff Goldblum, who plays the Wizard of Oz.
But really, he's just playing Jeff Goldblum.
Exactly.
It's Jeff Goldblum doing his thing.
It's
playing
in his
Jeff
entirety,
Goldblum.
like, he's just, like, unfiltered almost, like, yeah, he's just Jeff Goldblum.
He's just
what
playing.
Can you
like,
say?
If you've seen Jeff Goldblum in any movie recently, it's just that again.
Yeah.
Like,
Like,
there's nothing particularly.
yeah.
There's nothing about it that really stands out.
I was getting, like, the Grandmaster vibes from Thor Ragnarok, like, because he was just that goofy, like, he was just Jeff Goldblum. Yeah.
Yeah, like.
What can you
And
say?
he doesn't even. Yeah, there isn't really much to say about him because he's just Jeff Goldblum, and he doesn't even have that much screen time.
No, he doesn't.
He doesn't show up till very late in the movie.
He comes in the third act, but not even till, like, halfway through the third act.
I think it's a little earlier than that,
Maybe,
but
yeah.
he only has like a few minutes of screen time. He's not a significant role in the movie at all, which Oz has never really been a significant role in any Wizard of Oz story, aside from Oz the Great and Powerful, which was a prequel from, I think, 2013, where he's like the main character. But other than that, he's usually a side character that all the main characters are going to see. And I feel like this was kind of that same thing.
And I do want to quickly explain for anyone who doesn't understand. A film is broken into 3 acts, right? And so the first act is kind of just, the opening, the introduction. The second act is kind of like where the story...
The first act,
you explain.
the general rule of thumb is the first act is you're introducing a story, characters, and a conflict. The second act is our characters are going through this journey to solve this conflict, but they run into more conflicts, these smaller conflicts along the way, and then the ending, the third act, is when all those conflicts are resolved.
And it kind of comes together.
They wrap it up all. They wrap all of it up.
Yeah, so I just want to say that in this film, the third act was kind of the biggest act, like it was the most important, but it was kind of weird.
It was structured and paced very oddly.
Yes.
Where, for me, I think the first act and the third act were just bizarre for different reasons entirely, but the second act, the middle, I actually thought was fairly enjoyable.
Yeah.
It was good enough. The opening scene of the movie was just jarring. Like, it absolutely threw me for a loop. I cannot believe that that's how they chose to start the movie. And as soon as it started, I'm like, what? That's how we're kicking this off? Really?
It was definitely an interesting way to hook the viewer.
Especially, like, again, we can't get into spoilers here, but especially with, like, where the movie goes after that and how this is only part 1 of a 2-part story. I have no idea where they're going with part 2. So, and then the ending, I thought had some problems, but for a completely different reason. That it felt abrupt. It felt like it escalated really quickly. Like, the whole thing felt like it could have been resolved if they had just sat down and had a conversation.
So I'm just going to kind of add on here. So, we're talking about the beginning. they kind of tease something, or at least I thought it was a tease. I don't think they meant to tease it, because they teased this, and then I predicted where it was going to go. It was going to be a huge reveal at the end, right? And then they do nothing with it. And I'm like, wait, go back to the very beginning. You did this, and we're at the very end, and you haven't done anything with it, so you didn't mean to tease that. Why did you do that then? So already that was kind of confusing. They were kind of throwing things in there that didn't need to be in there, and they didn't do anything with them. And then, again, the ending was very abrupt and it almost felt forced. Like, it was kind of like they knew it was already such a long movie, they just had to get to it.
For reference, we don't know anything about the stage play.
No.
We don't know anything about, like, any of the books. I think it's pretty safe to say that neither of us are particularly big fans of The Wizard of Oz or, like, that lore or anything.
Yeah.
And so, I didn't have particularly high hopes going in this movie, but I tried to go in with an open mind, and,
Same.
I mean, coming out, it was basically what I expected. If anything, it was maybe a little bit worse, because some of these problems seemed very obvious.
Yeah, going in, I knew what was going to happen, because, like, that's just the kind of movie it is, and I was already predicting the ending. And I was right in my predictions, but I was still kind of shocked with how they did it, and I don't think I liked how they did everything. It was still a good movie, and it was still very enjoyable. It was just kind of like, some of it was hit or miss.
Yeah, like, I thought, like, the movie was a lot funnier than I was expecting.
Yeah.
There's a couple of different moments of humor kind of sprinkled throughout the movie that worked pretty well for me, that I thought were really funny.
Yeah.
And
Glinda's character was definitely funny.
well, yeah, because, like, her narcissism is, like, played for laughs at certain points, which seems a little odd, but...
And, yeah, and the Wicked Witch's reactions to it was definitely... That was enjoyable.
Yeah, that was another thing, is, like, she's narcissistic, and then the witch's response to that is also pretty funny at times.
She's just like, alright, that's who you are, we're gonna go with it.
Yeah, so... I mean, I didn't think it was, like, awful. Again, coming from someone who doesn't really like musicals, I didn't think it was terrible. In general, if you're not a fan of musicals, I would say don't see it. It's probably not going to win you over.
Yeah, I got lost.
I'm just sick of these movies, these stories where we have to take this villain from years past...
Who's clearly a villain.
Who is very obviously a villain, who has done some, like, truly horrible things... And we're just going to give them a sympathetic origin story where, look, they were... Being bad wasn't necessarily their choice. You know, they were treated poorly.
But it kind of was.
Like, no. If you go back and watch The Wizard of Oz, the Wicked Witch is very much a very, very bad person. I mean, for our final recommendations... I'd go, like, mixed positive. I'd give it, like, a 6 out of 10. I feel like that's kind of generous. As someone who doesn't really like musicals,
Yeah.
I think I respected it more than I actually enjoyed it or liked it. And I can't really recommend this to you if you're not a fan of musicals. If you like if you like The Wizard of Oz, if you like musicals, go see it. I think you'll have a great time with it. Otherwise, you should sit this one out.
Yeah, so, I had a lot of different takes on this movie. So, when I first came out, I was like, oh, I loved it. Then I thought about it, and I'm like, maybe I didn't love it. And now we're talking about it, and I'm just kind of like, I really still don't know how I felt about this film, especially as a film. So, I'd say I have, like, a range. So, I'm, like, 5.5 to 6.5, depending on how I'm viewing it. So, if I'm viewing it when I first came out of the theater, it was definitely 6.5. If I'm viewing it now, it's probably a 5.5, 6. I guess it just really depends on which way I'm looking at this film. I can't...
There's a lot of stuff going on in that
There's
brain
a lot.
of yours.
Yeah. And I will say, just one more note, that if... I think that you should rewatch The Wizard of Oz before going into this. And there are some Easter eggs in this movie that hint at the original movie, which is kind of cool. Some of them are hidden, some of them are not so hidden.
I don't think you really need to see The Wizard of Oz before watching this movie. Like, yeah, there are some Easter eggs, but, like, they're not really of any significance. Some of them are, like, blink and you'll miss it things.
Yeah.
I actually think it might make it more confusing because the way that the characters are presented here is pretty different from how they're characterized in the original. So I don't think you really need to, or for that fact, even really should. But that's just me.
Yeah, so I guess it depends. And again, like if you like musicals, it's for you. If you don't, you're probably not going to enjoy it. So I guess it really depends. Again, use the trailer as your guide, I guess.
Yeah, but those are just our thoughts.
Yeah.
I mean, make your own choice whether
Go
you want to
see it for
or
yourself.
not.
And
I do, but there are going to be. It sounds like a lot of people are going to be watching this movie. Like, there's just everyone's talking about it.
Yep.
So if you don't want to be like left out of the conversation, I would say go and see it so that you are a part of the conversation.
And you have your own opinion.
But yeah, overall, I mean, we enjoyed it enough for what it was.
But we're not going to rewatch it.
I have no plans to rewatch it. But
yeah, and we'll see what part 2 brings.
I guess. But
yeah, so that's it.
Overall, those are just our thoughts, and thank you so much for tuning in and watching.